next stop in our journey takes us to a former gold mining settlement where thousands of Chinese immigrants once thrived. But that golden opportunity would soon take a tragic turn. Located along the northwestern coastline of Borneo, Sarawak is well known for its abundance in natural resources that include timber and petroleum. However, nearly 200 years ago, early Chinese immigrants stumbled on a find more precious than anyone could have imagined. In 1823, gold was discovered in a small region known as Bao, 50 kilometers to the east of Sarawak's main settlement of Kuching. A gold rush ensued, and Hakka Chinese miners from neighboring Indonesia poured in to seek their fortunes. They set up a gold mining settlement in Bao as their numbers swelled. By the late 1930s, there were thousands of Chinese working the gold mines. I traveled to present-day Bao town to explore the secrets behind these former mines. Today, years after gold mining has stopped, Bao is still known as the gold town of Sarawak. Many inhabitants of the town are also of Chinese descent. My investigation brings me in touch with Mr. Chai, a local Hakka Chinese whose family has lived in Bao for years.
公公在中国来的时候就是来这边做金矿啦，现在大概我是第3代了，这边来了。现在他们有的是剪头发，有卖面的，有的卖五金的，剪头发啦。他们是父亲是上次也是从中国来，老板呢。
So I actually have a history of gold mining in your family history then. Even though the locals have adapted to other sources of livelihood, hints of their gold mining past still remain. I asked Mr. Chai to bring me to one of these many abandoned mines to find out what it was like at the height of the gold rush.
现在啊，这个上次是平地来了，过后他们挖洞拿那个泥土起来做金的，过后现在就变到大湖里面去了。
Wow, so this entire area was once their kind of working ground or the mine areas. How many caves are here in this area?
现在呢，那洞那边有5、6个，过后这边有一个，还有过那边去，那边有还有3个大洞的啦。
So there would have been about 50 to 60 workers just here at this site alone. But that would have been multiplied throughout this entire area. So literally thousands of workers just in the surrounding area. To get a better sense of the conditions the miners had to work under, we head inside a former mine. This is quite impressive. This is big, actually. Much bigger than I expected. I can see up there some actual drill holes, evidence of blasting, and even right over here as well.
上次啊，他们是用铁锤和那个钢铁来打的，打一个洞过后放药进去炸出来的，没有煤芯的，就是用手工的。
I imagine that originally if this tunnel would have been much smaller.
上次它洞不会大，因为用手工打的啊，用那个炸药炸的啊，他要看那个石头的路啦，金的石头的路有多大就多大金了。这个啊，大概有10多年了，没有人做工这边的啦，因为这个现在这个金这边金已是没有了啦。
The gold mines of Bao were closed as most of the mines had been exhausted and the remaining deposits were too deep or dangerous to extract.
这个木板是上次有放上面去那边拿泥土的，因为现在那个泥土现在是很危险啦， 你没有注意，那条河跌下来以后跌到身体都会弄伤了。结果现在他们就不要做了啦。
Today, opportunistic locals still prospect these abandoned mines, looking to make their fortunes. What they find, however, may not be worth the risk.
这个是上次我的爸爸和我们的爷爷拿的金石头，就是这个咯。啊，这个是不是很高的金了？这是有差不多有28%左右，这个石头了，有金的了。
How in the world were you able to notice that this had some traces of gold on it?
那你看到你说全部是金，这个是没有这个平常的石头，这个没有用的。你要看它有一点红红的，啊。红红的啊，这个是它的泥土了。你看，这是有金的。
Imagine what a difficult task it would have been to find gold in here. I mean, he's talking about red sediments on a rock. We're in a cave full of red sediments everywhere. It would have been such a impossible, really. I certainly would have been useless at this. The gold mines of Bao fueled a thriving Chinese settlement in the 1820s. But less than 30 years later, this prospering boomtown would be razed to the ground in a bloody massacre. And the man responsible for it was none other than the White Raja himself, James Brooke. In the early 1800s, Hakka Chinese miners prospecting in Bao area hit pay dirt. They unearthed 24-karat gold buried deep underground. The ensuing gold rush sparked a thriving boomtown known as Maosan Settlement, until events took a tragic turn. In 1857, James Brooke, the White Raja of Sarawak, set fire to the town, killing over 2,000 settlers, including women and children. Why would the ruler of the land turn a prospering gold town into an ash-filled cemetery? My research brings me to a suburban neighborhood just minutes away from the main town of Bao. Just over 150 years ago, this was the site of Maosan Settlement. Hello, Dr. Chang.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Anthony.
Welcome you to the historical site of Maosan.
My contact is a local historian who has written extensively about Bao District's Chinese heritage.
The temple here was the first temple built when the Chinese settlement settled down here. On the way up to the higher level here, there were 2 rows of shop houses where there are coffee shop and opium shop open in the olden days.
So even today, I mean, that concept is still the same, because today with the shop houses, we have the storefront in the bottom level,
yes,
and the living quarters kind of up above.
Yeah.
Maosan had its own sovereign identity and was governed by its appointed leader, Liu Shanpang.
And this is the flag post built by Liu Shanpang when they started the Maosan here.
Wow, this flag post then is basically 190 years old. Events took a sharp turn, however, when the White Raja began eyeing its lucrative gold mines.
James Brooke came in 1841. After grabbing the Kuching, they want to take over the upper Sarawak, that is Maosan, of which our Prime Minister Liu Shanpang refused.
What was James Brooke doing?
He came here to disturb, that is to say, want to impose tax, want to interfere the export of gold here, and then third thing, want to grab the land so that they can stay under the full control of him.
In 1857, frustration with James Brooke's constant attempts to establish control over the gold town broke out into open rebellion. Led by Liu Shanpang, 600 armed miners attacked and occupied the Brooke stronghold of Kuching for 3 days before returning to Maosan settlement. Their failure to kill James Brooke, however, would prove tragic for the people of Maosan. Brooke's response was swift and deadly. On February 25, 1857, he torched Maosan settlement, killing more than 2,000 settlers as revenge for the plunder of Kuching.
Most of them were killed in the ghost cave and on the way from Kuching back to Maosan here. And then those who survived then escaped to Indonesia. That is not many.
So he just basically wanted to squash out or wipe out any potential threat to his power.
Yes, if they don't wipe them out, later on they may start another rebellion to counter-attack James Brooke again.
The Chinese Miners' Rebellion may have happened over 150 years ago, but the memory of the event remains firmly etched in the district of Bao.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
I meet with Mr. Ngui, a local Hakka Chinese who is bringing me to pay my respects to Liu Shanbang, the man who led the tragic rebellion of 1857.
这个是他以前啊，在战死的时候就放在这边了。
Now I've noticed all these joss sticks kind of placed here in the mound. How long have people been coming to pay their respects here?
自从这个刘占邦有了这个墓之后啊，每年都有善男信女来拜了，差不多到现在有130多年的历史。
Is this a common practice in Chinese culture?
就是因为说崇拜他哦，为了整个华人区的利益，而把整个真实之度外，就是跟这个哪家抗争啊，啊，在这边的那个地位很高。
The rebels in the 1857 uprising were always viewed as the antagonists. But it was not until the 1980s that people began to reinterpret their own local history. These people who were involved in the uprising were not rebels at all, but actually turned out to be national heroes. And so really a indicator of how this present-day town has a very strong sense and connection to its past. The White Rajas of Sarawak suppressed the Chinese gold miners as well as Iban headhunters to establish power over the state. But in order to hang on to that authority, the Brookes required something else, the might of gunpowder. Unlike many other former colonies in Southeast Asia that were under British imperial rule, Sarawak's history is unique in that it was the private kingdom of the Brooke family. But how did one family manage to rule a land that spans 120,000 square kilometers for more than a century? James Brooke, who was given rule over Sarawak by the Sultan of Brunei, spent the early years of his reign suppressing uprisings. By the end of his rule, he had created a kingdom that united over 20 different indigenous groups. In 1863, James Brooke was succeeded as the White Raja by his nephew, Charles Brooke. Nicknamed the Builder by some, Charles Brooke was the strategist who left nothing to chance. My research tells me that military power alone did not help Charles Brooke maintain his dominion over Sarawak. Our investigation brings us to the town of Sri Aman, a former stronghold of the Iban headhunters. Located on the bank of the Batang Lupar River, Sri Aman was an important gateway to the trading ports of Kuching. It was here that Charles Brooke built Sarawak's first military outpost in 1864, Fort Alice. So, Rama?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anthony. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
My contact is Rama, a curator with the Sarawak Museum who is going to reveal how the fort was more than just for defense. This fort, it's very different from typical forts that you see with like gun placements or cannon placements. I mean, the fact that it was all built from wood.
Actually, this was built as a landmark to say that, okay, this is the Brook area. So this is their administration center.
So really, this wasn't so much a defensive fort, but more a symbol of the presence of the White Raja, as well as an indicator of how far, you know, they were able to extend their power all the way here to Sri Aman.
Yeah.
Doesn't really feel like a typical fort. I mean, it definitely has kind of a administrative center type of vibe to it. And all of these posts here, these are actual wood posts, right?
This is wood from one tree trunk. It's called bilian. We can find it in Borneo. And then will last for like more than 100 years.
Now, is this original? This
was new because this building has housed a few changes of administration, like from the Brook era. They also housed the Japanese. And during the Malaysia time also, this fort also housed the courtroom, post office even. It's really a historical building.
Fort Alice marked the beginning of civil administration over the interior of Sarawak. Charles Brooke presided as judge in Fort Alice over various disputes among the locals. He also made the fort a center for government officials to attend to the locals, pioneering the region's civil service in place of the feudal tribal system. Charles Brooke continued building a string of forts across Sarawak to reinforce his rule. His web of fortifications stretched from the interior of Sarawak to the stronghold of Kuching. Kuching was the seat of power for the Brookes throughout their reign in Sarawak. Today, it is a modern capital and the commercial hub of the state. Our destination is its last surviving guardians from the era of the White Rajas. Fort Margarita, one of the last and most modern forts built by Charles Brooke. Built on the north bank of the Sarawak River, the fort contains cannon placements that boast an impressive arc of coverage of the waterway and the city center. Hello, Heidi. I'm meeting with Heidi Munan, a historian and curator at the Sarawak Museum. Now, so was this fort then built as a defensive fort or as a way of kind of keeping out the pirates?
I think it's way after the time when pirates came all the way up to Kuching. But it was built as a prestige thing. And to like make the point, this is our fort, here we are, don't mess with us.
Because, I mean, if you were coming in along the river, this would be one of the first things you saw. Maybe can you flesh out a little bit about the 1880s?
We're talking about the reign of Raja Charles, when fighting for territory and really hanging on by the skin of his teeth, well, that was over. And we'll look at the fort. The Raja had money to build something quite substantial. There was a bit of money. We were establishing ourselves, if that's the right word for the Brookes. And I think, yeah, it was a time of consolidation.
So whereas James Brooke was really kind of the adventurer, soldier type, it was Charles Brooke who was the builder and responsible for kind of just building upon what had already been established, refining it.
Yeah. He built, he expanded, he administered. He had an idea of administration and he had an idea of finance, which James did not.
More than a symbol of status, Fort Margarita was an early tool in helping Charles Brooke institute the rule of law.
Used to be a policeman.
His code of justice, however, could be harsh at times. This would be like the central courtyard?
Yes, it is not. I can't remember exactly where, but they had a gallows, they had a drop there, a trapdoor and all the rest of it.
In the early stages then, it was actually still execution by hanging?
It was always, sometimes by firing squad. It's sort of, I don't know who it depended on.
I mean, these ways of executing seem like a very harsh code of law. How did it go with the locals back then?
Well, I don't think the locals saw it as foreigners interfering. Imagine a guy is murdered. They catch the murderer, they hang him. Well, the guy who was murdered was a local. All his bereaved family were all locals, and I suppose they like to see justice done. They did not have many executions. The normal thing was you get a term of penal servitude, as it was called.
So sort of a way of kind of removing the negative stigma.
I think so, yes.
Charles Brooke's son, Viner Brooke, succeeded him as Sarawak's third and final white Raja in 1917. He continued Charles's work in developing Sarawak and focused on expanding commerce and infrastructure. Heidi brings me to Padungan Street that still contains hints of how Viner Brooke transformed the face of modern Kuching. Back in the day then, after World War I, I mean, this would have been kind of the most modern or developed part of Kuching then,
Pretty
right?
much, yes. You see how the houses were built, not just for being a useful business house, but for being beautiful. They made decorations, they made false fronts. These things are not the gables of the roof, they're just facade. No one in the members did that, they wouldn't waste their money.
Definitely a form of a status symbol, right?
This is the new part of town, and we're showing you the way. Look at the road itself. Double lane road, so wide. Everybody thought the Raja was crazy to build a road this wide. Now we think it's the only road in Kuching.
Yeah.
It's wide enough.
But after over 100 years of ruling Sarawak, the Brookes would soon lose their power. The Japanese invaded Sarawak during World War II, ending the Brooke family rule. After its liberation 3 years later, Sarawak became a British colony. It was only in the early 60s that Sarawak became part of an independent Malaysia. After so many years have passed, how do people living here in Sarawak feel about kind of the White Raja's era?
Mostly I think it's a bit of nostalgia. No one says, ooh, we want the Rajas back. Not that. Neither, oh, they were wicked, wicked people. It's just a part of our history. There's one thing the Rajas did for Sarawak. Not all that many people appreciate that, but they prized Sarawak away from the Brunei rule. When the time came for forming Malaysia and stuff of that sort, Sarawak was an entity of its own, not under the suzerainty of another Borneo power. That I think we have to credit the Rajas with.
The Brookes changed the face of Sarawak, transforming it from a feudal land of conflicting tribes into a modern state. But for centuries before their arrival, an ancient tribe had already found the secret to living peacefully. Their methods have been known to engage the world of the supernatural. The Malanaos. Believed to be the earliest inhabitants of Sarawak, they settled along the coastal regions of the state, living off the land's rich abundance. But their rustic traditions hide other secrets. The Malanaos believe in a strong spiritual connection to the land and are among Sarawak's most ancient shamans. My quest to track down the Malanaos' mysterious practices takes me to the town of Muka. Today, Muka is home to a large Malanao population, many of whom are descendants from the same shamanistic tribes of ancient times. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice.
My guide, Diana Rose, is a Malanao writer, committed to preserving her heritage. Diana also runs a homestay modeled after a traditional Malanao longhouse. I mean, you have to even take a step back to kind of take it all in because it's so big.
About 11 years ago, I built this, but the original house is higher. It should be as high as that tree.
No.
Yeah, it is.
That's about 30 feet high.
Yes, because it's 3 stories actually.
What in the world would they build it that high for?
One is for glory now, one is for security. We are under threat from people from the interior, from the headhunters, and then we have from the sea, from pirates. So that's the reason why I built a toll house, basically for sentry. Another one is glory because most of the people in the toll house are aristocrats.
As one of the earliest inhabitants of Sarawak, the Melanau faced competition for land when other tribes began migrating into the area. Faced with the threat of war, the Melanau devised an intricate system of diplomacy. Using food as a commodity, they would trade with rival tribes as a means of establishing peaceful relationships.
This is part of our family gathering food. Usually we have this in the middle and we have a lot of other food in between, and then we have a big family gathering. Everybody fight for this and eat all the side food.
Everything on this table represents traditional Melanau food, but here we are eating rice.
This is something that we have adopted. The Melanau people basically start eating rice 1930s until today.
So then where does the rice come from? Do you guys grow it?
In the past, we don't actually. We got our rice from our neighbors, basically the Iban, through barter trading. Because what we do is that we sell them what we have here, the fish and everything, and then they in exchange, they pay us with the rice. It's part of our diplomatic relations, actually.
Beyond establishing a system of diplomacy in the face of hostile tribes, the Melanaus also developed an ancient healing tradition involving the spiritual world. Diana is taking me to witness the crafting of an important ritual artifact.
Or he's carving a balloon, a healing dolls. When we go through a ritual of babayo, so if you have a kind of illnesses that is caused by a spirit, so the shamans or the babayo person will go and cast out the bad spirit that caused your illnesses and then transfer this to this doll. If the spirit that caused your illness is from the forest, then they will hang up in a tree in the forest, or it's from the river, then it's just thrown down in the river.
Returning the spirit back to nature.
Yes, back to where they come from.
Okay.
Shamans tending to a patient would first identify the kind of spirits causing the illness